Welcome to the complete animation of Gloria from DreamWorks Animation's Madagascar. So coming back to watch, through this movie in order to make this complete animation video was such a trip down memory lane because of just how many relics of the past this movie has. Because this movie, when it first came out, its whole thing was that it was modern. It took place in the modern day. The people who were watching the movie back when this movie first came out, 2004? I want to say 2004. They would have seen it and be like, oh yeah, that's just modern. That's just today. And there are so many things that you just do not see anymore that are included in this movie. Chief among them being the payphone. There's an entire gag where Marty runs away and Alex has to think, what can I do to save my friend? And the only thing he can think to do is, oh, let's call the humans. And so he picks up a payphone that's right next to his enclosure and calls up the humans. And then the gag is that, it's just lion sounds coming out of the other end. But just seeing a payphone, like, you do not see those anymore. I grew up around payphones. Like, my older brother, he even gave me $1 to use a payphone once when I was like a really kid. But by the time I was in, high school or whatever, everything was cell phones again. Like, I would be legit surprised if anybody knows of a payphone that is still alive, awake, and, connected nowadays. But one of the things that I think impressed me a lot about Madagascar is the ways in which it does still hold up today. I think the water effects in this movie are actually pretty good. One of the things that I do when, talking about older 3D films is just how much of their visuals are dated, especially by modern standards. Because holy cow, there is no visual medium that has gone through such a huge amount of change as computer generated images. You look at Toy Story and then you look at Sing 2. You look at them and you're like, there is no way that the same technology was even being used here. But it was. And it's still being used today, much to the chagrin of many people like me who wish that, the industry's fascination with 3D animation would, be toned down a bit. We could use some 2D animation again. DreamWorks used to make some. They made really good ones. And now, that's not to say that 3D animation is bad. It's just that people like me feel like there is room for both. But, Madagascar was still fairly fresh and new when it first came out. The craze of 3D movies was not complete. Disney was still making a few 2D movies at this time. So this complete animation video is about Gloria. And let me just say that this is a Patreon request video. I would not have made a video about this character if I was not paid to do so. And even after going through this complete animation and seeing a lot of her, let's just say that I would still need to be paid to do so. Which is the plan. The Patreon who made this, paid to have me make this video, still seems to want me to make the rest of the videos that include Gloria. So, it's good money. I'll do it. One of the big things about Madagascar is its comparison with The Wild. The Wild is a different movie that actually was released a little bit after Madagascar, but many people, myself included, have remarked about how absolutely similar the two films are, where it's a group of animals from the Central Park Zoo in New York City who escape from the zoo to rescue their friend and end up all the way back in Africa. There's a lot more similarities as well. Like, one of the major characters is a lion, one of the major characters is a giraffe. And lots of people, when they see that, they're like, wow, was there like some corporate espionage going on here? Did somebody know about one of the other movies and steal the idea? And from what I've been able to gather is that there wasn't any corporate espionage, and it really was just a freak coincidence. Kind of like the two movies Deep Impact and Armageddon. And after seeing, both of them fairly recently, like years ago, I was of the opinion that I thought that The Wild looked better in many ways, and that I wasn't the hugest fan of the angular and geometric stylings that Madagascar has. But I think I've come around the complete opposite direction now. I think that the more naturalistic stylings of The Wild end up making it more dated and less visually appealing. The faces aren't nearly as visually appealing in The Wild as they are in Madagascar. Yeah, I think that Madagascar is the superior film. To be completely honest, I don't think that both of them are that great. I don't think that Madagascar is, worthy of being called like a DreamWorks classic. I think it just was. It felt like it was riding the bandwagon that Shrek started. Like, what's with the old lady who keeps on, hitting Alex in the balls? What was with earlier DreamWorks and, nut jokes? It's like, it really feels like DreamWorks was so determined to be the anti-Disney that they ended up stuffing so many of their movies with so much gross out humor, nut jokes, fart jokes, butt jokes, that, like, going back and watching them now, it's like, really? This is what you wanted to do? And it seems like DreamWorks itself as a studio has matured. Because you look at, Shrek, and it's like, okay, Shrek is Shrek. Like, regardless of what it is what it is. I don't even know if that makes sense, but yeah, Shrek is Shrek. But then you look all the way to the most recent entry in the series, in the franchise, I mean, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And it's like indistinguishable. Aside from, the art style change, which I think was a massive win. Like, holy cow, I wish more movies looked like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. But just the tone of the movie and the way that it does things, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish still has, that quote-unquote DreamWorks edge. It has, some jokes that are, a bit toilet humory that will make the kids laugh. But it does it in such a more tasteful way. Whereas here, in Madagascar, DreamWorks was still in the phase where it's like, oh, this main character is pretty silly and can be made fun of. And he's a guy. Guess where we're going to have this foot go? And I think that I'm glad that DreamWorks has passed that stage. If DreamWorks' next movie has a nut joke, I will be very disappointed because they will be regressing. I don't think that I Like to Move It is quite as good as, like, it doesn't have the legs. It's like every once in a while, there's a movie that has, its, hit number one single that was made for the movie is included in the movie and is able to, basically be like, hey, this is the movie's song. The movie isn't a musical, but it does have this one song in it. And Madagascar's was I Like to Move It. Treasure Planet was, I can't remember what it's called. It's a good one. And then Zootopia had Try Everything. I don't think that I Like to Move It really has the legs that those other ones do. Like, I can't really see myself going onto Spotify and clicking liked on I Like to Move It and adding it to a playlist that'll show up at once again. I just don't see it happening. And I think a big part of it is King Julian. Like, King Julian's character, I'm just not the biggest fan of. The way he talks, it's like, yeah, he's, the ruler who is like the king of the fools. When everybody's a fool, what does the king look like? He's another fool. He might even be the most foolish of them all. And he talks like that. I don't like his accent. I don't even know what kind of accent it's supposed to be. I think they deliberately designed King Julian to be, hey, let's make an accent, but don't make it actually sound like any specific, group of people so that nobody gets mad at us for, not being politically correct enough. Yeah, I don't like King Julian, and it's like the other half of the I Like to Move It song is King Julian talking about whatever it is King Julian talks about. All the women around the world, they like to move their bodies, they like to move them sweet and sassy. Like, what even is this song? Like, it's got a pretty good beat, but yeah, it's not. I just don't think it has the legs to be a song that keeps you going forward. So visually, I did talk about the water here in Madagascar, and I think the water really does hold up. I think that the water that was, just like in the rivers, in the zoo enclosures, especially the ocean water, is actually really good for the time period. Because one of the things about 3D animation is basically everything is during this era was ripe for improvement. Lighting, like, you look at the first Toy Story and it's like, wow, this is a flat movie. You look at the first Toy Story, it's like, wow, these textures are really low resolution. Do I want to watch this movie in 4K? Because the textures sure aren't 4K. But Madagascar, I really think that all things considered, it's not glaringly obvious how old it is. It's like when you look at the fine details, yeah, the sand doesn't look very good. They fixed that in How to Train Your Dragon 3. If you know, you know. Like, if you're like me, you're like, oh wow, that's sand. That's some really good sand. But here in Madagascar, it's just all right. But here, this scene where everybody's like spitting water, those are some actually like pretty visually appealing, spews of water. Just a fine mist of water. I don't know how they did it. Were they all particles? Were they something that was inserted later and not actually, like a physical object in the scene? I don't know, but they look good. And the lighting is also not terribly flat. Like this scene here, where it takes place at night, I think that the lighting is actually pretty pleasant. It's not, pitch dark, but it is dark enough to show, yeah, this is night. But it also has a pretty good glow from the fire. I will say though, I think that the humans in this movie weren't the greatest. Like most of them didn't look that good. A lot of them felt like, copy pasted faces to go in the crowd, which means that it's a good thing that you don't see humans very often. It's like you see humans in New York City, you see the humans that the penguins take out on the ship, and then you don't have any more humans at all, which I think is a good thing because they didn't look that good. Because remember, this was during the time when if you're making a 3D animated feature, you basically had to choose your battles, where it's like, okay, our technology stack is good enough to handle this. That's a baseline. We can have lots of this and it'll look fine. But what can we put in here that is something new, that we'll either have to develop new tools for, new workflows for? You got to pick your battles. And I think that this movie's battles were fur and water. I think those were the big things that they focused on in this movie, and I think they got them all right. The fur effects are pretty good, especially Alex's mane. Alex's mane, I think, looks pretty good even today. I can't imagine how messed up the mane was during development, because, if you look at behind the scenes stuff of early 3D animation, where it's like models, rigs, they all just wig out, and sometimes the animators like it enough that they record it. And way back in the day, they liked it enough that they pushed it forward to be in the special features, which is something I really miss. I really miss the special features that used to come with animated features. Like Pixar. Pixar used to be the best. You look at the special features for Finding Nemo, they talked about how that was their movie where they wanted to master water. And they had some test footage of some water scenes, and they asked their team to be like, okay, here's a project, recreate these scenes as closely as possible. And they did, and they showed them side by side, and at a cursory glance, you could not tell a difference. It's like, and that was so cool. It was so cool that they put that in the DVD for you to see. Then you go and look at something like Sing 2, which is, I think, one of the most beautiful, traditional 3D animated features to come out in the last few years. And you look at its special features, it has like, oh, here's some puppets that you can make with your kids. Here, cutouts, cut out puppets. And here are, some clips of the same songs with some sing-along features added in. Where's all the behind-the-scenes stuff? Where is, the deep dive into, here's how we modeled this character, here's how we rigged them, and here's how we lit them. And then finally, here's how we rendered it all using our awesome, path tracer with a giant server farm to render millions of rays. Where's that? Like, the special features used to be so good. Especially like Zootopia. Zootopia, its Blu-ray release actually had some pretty decent special features. It had some good cut scenes where they're like, oh, here's how different the story was for so long during development, and then here's what it ended up being. That's really good stuff. But then years later, you get, special features that I've only seen on YouTube talking about how there's a warehouse looking place in the background of one of the scenes, And if you looked inside of that warehouse, it would be filled with the most incredible 3D modeled like theme park attractions. And you would never see that in the actual movie because the story didn't call for it. And they said that that was one of the most expensive background elements you've ever seen in any movie. Why wasn't that part of the special features? Everybody knows that the gold standard, nobody will ever do it better, but the gold standard of special features to come in the DVD of a movie is the extended edition bonus feature discs for the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like, seriously, the special features are so good in that one. It's like, if you want to know anything about the production of that movie, there's a really good chance that the special features of that will give you at least something about behind the scenes for it. And I don't know if Madagascar did that. I never really poured through the special features on Madagascar. So maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. If you can't tell, I've run out of things to say about this movie. And some of the things I want to say about it include the sequel, but I don't want to talk so much about the sequel right now because then I would feel like I'm repeating stuff for when I do the complete animation of Gloria for the sequel. I think that Madagascar is one of the DreamWorks movies that holds up better nowadays than many of their others. Because this was around the era where Shark Tale came out. Shark Tale, I think, is one of DreamWorks', if not one of the most visually unappealing movies to come out of that studio. Shark Tale just doesn't look good in so many ways. Low resolution textures a bunch of places and really questionable. I don't want to say ugly, but I kind of want to. Character designs. It's like, seriously, you think any problems that I have with character designs in Madagascar, these all look like, best of the best masterpieces compared to some of the stuff that they try to pull in Shark Tale. So, Madagascar isn't amazing. It's not great, but it's good. Pretty good. Madagascar is pretty good. And it's also pretty colorful. Because if you know anything, I really hate the era that would come a few years after this where lots of media would start to be so desaturated in color. But Madagascar, it's got the color. So yeah. This has been the complete animation of Gloria from Madagascar. Tune in next month for Madagascar 2. Thanks for watching.